Amy Slaton had always dreamed of having a big family, one filled with laughter, little feet running through the hallways, and holidays where the table was crowded with children reaching for mashed potatoes and pie. She used to joke with Tammy that one day she'd have so many kids that she'd need a school bus just to take them all to the park. Deep down, though, Amy's dreams weren't really about numbers. They were about love. After having her 2 sons, Gage and Glenn, she felt like her life had changed forever. Motherhood was hard, messy, and exhausting, but it was also the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. Every late-night feeding, every diaper change, every first smile made her heart swell with a kind of joy that nothing else could bring. Still, in quiet moments, when she'd rock Glenn to sleep or watch Gage toddle around the living room, she sometimes whispered to herself, "Wouldn't it be amazing if I had twins?" It wasn't just a passing thought. For Amy, the idea of twins felt magical. She imagined the way they would grow up together, a built-in best friend for life. She pictured matching onesies, side-by-side cribs, and double the laughter. She knew it would also mean double the chaos, double the noise, and double the sleepless nights. But Amy had always been someone who embraced the mess of life. She liked the idea of her home being loud, colorful, and full of energy. So when she found out she was pregnant again, and later discovered that she was carrying twins, she cried tears of joy. For weeks, she couldn't stop smiling. She told her family, her friends, and even the cashier at Walmart, "I'm having twins," as if she couldn't quite believe it herself. She threw herself into preparations with a kind of energy that surprised even her. She painted the nursery with soft pastel shades, picking a calming mint green and pale yellow that would work whether the twins were boys or girls. She bought 2 cribs and placed them side by side, lining them with fluffy blankets patterned with stars. She folded tiny clothes, 2 of everything, into neat little drawers, matching socks, matching onesies, matching pajamas with little animals stitched on the front. She even bought 2 identical teddy bears and placed them gently in each crib, whispering, "You're going to be loved so much." Every time she walked past the nursery, she paused in the doorway, imagining the 2 babies lying there, giggling or babbling together, their little hands reaching for each other. But when the big day finally arrived, reality was far more difficult than Amy could have ever imagined. The labor was long, exhausting, and filled with moments where she felt like she couldn't push anymore. Her body shook with the effort, and sweat poured down her face, but she pushed through every contraction with the thought of holding her twins in her arms. Finally, after hours that felt like an eternity, she delivered her babies. For one precious moment, everything was perfect. She looked at their tiny faces, their fragile little fingers curled into fists, and she cried with happiness. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They're mine." But within hours, the joy turned into a nightmare. Doctors and nurses began whispering to each other, their faces tense. The babies were struggling to breathe. Their tiny chests rose and fell unevenly, their skin pale and fragile looking. Alarms beeped, nurses rushed in, and Amy's heart sank. She felt like the room was spinning as she watched them wheel her newborns away. She wanted to scream, to run after them, to hold them close and tell them everything would be okay. But all she could do was sit there, numb. As they disappeared into the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit was a world of its own, a place filled with the constant hum of machines, the steady beeping of monitors, and the soft cries of fragile infants fighting to survive. For Amy, it was like stepping into another universe, a place where time moved differently, where every second was heavy with fear and hope. She sat by the glass window, watching as doctors hooked up her babies to tubes, wires, and ventilators. Their tiny bodies seemed even smaller, surrounded by all that medical equipment. Amy pressed her forehead against the glass, tears rolling down her cheeks, whispering, "Please, please be okay." The doctors told her the truth plainly. The twins were in critical condition, their lungs weren't strong enough, and their survival couldn't be guaranteed. The words shattered Amy's heart. She had spent months dreaming about this moment, about bringing her babies home and introducing them to their brothers, about holding them in the rocking chair and singing them lullabies. Instead, she was staring at machines keeping them alive. She felt helpless, powerless, and utterly broken. Every night she sat in the quiet hospital room, her hands clasped tightly together, praying through sobs. "Please God," she whispered, "don't take my babies away from me. Please let them live." Her sister Tammy came to the hospital as soon as she could. Tammy had her own struggles, her health issues, her battles with weight, and her own challenges with the outside world, but in that moment, none of it mattered. She sat beside Amy, holding her hand, her eyes glassy with tears. "Amy," she said softly, "these little ones are fighters, just like us. They're going to surprise everybody." Amy leaned against her sister, finding comfort in the bond they shared. They had been through so much together, the good, the bad, the ugly, and now they were facing this heartbreak side by side. Tammy stayed as long as she could, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in silence, and sometimes just reminding Amy that miracles do happen. The news spread quickly among fans and well-wishers. Amy's story had always been public. People had watched her grow up, watched her struggles, her triumphs, her heartbreaks, and her joys. Now, the same fans who had cheered her on through surgery, cheered her on through marriage, and celebrated the birth of her children, were flooding her with messages of support. Amy made a post on social media, her words raw and emotional. "This is the hardest time of my life," she wrote. "My babies need all the love and strength they can get. Please pray for them." Within hours, thousands of people had responded, leaving comments filled with encouragement, prayers, and love. For Amy, those messages became a lifeline. She read them late at night when she couldn't sleep, when the weight of uncertainty felt too heavy to carry. Strangers from across the world were rooting for her babies, sending virtual hugs, lighting candles, and whispering their own prayers. It didn't take away the fear, but it gave her strength to keep going, to keep showing up at the NICU every morning, to keep whispering promises of love into her baby's ears even when they couldn't hear her. Days turned into weeks. Each morning, Amy walked into the NICU with her heart pounding. Would today bring good news or heartbreak? Sometimes the doctors said the babies were stable. Sometimes they said there had been setbacks. The uncertainty was torture. She clung to every tiny sign of progress. The way one baby's chest rose a little stronger, the way the other squeezed her finger ever so faintly. She celebrated every small victory as if it were a miracle. One day, one of the twins started breathing just a little easier, his chest moving with more rhythm. The nurses smiled at Amy and said, "This is progress." Amy cried, tears of relief, pressing her hand against the glass, whispering, "That's my boy. Keep fighting." Even in those moments of fragile hope, Amy knew the journey was far from over. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she could hardly comprehend, but she refused to give up. She kissed their foreheads through the wires and tubes, whispering promises of love and protection. "Mama's here," she told them. "Mama's not going anywhere." For Amy, this was more than a medical crisis. It was a test of everything she believed in: her faith, her strength, her resilience. It was a test of the unbreakable love of a mother who would never stop fighting for her children. She had dreamed of this moment being filled with laughter and joy, but instead, it was filled with fear and heartache. Yet even in the darkest moments, Amy held on to the one thing she had left: hope. The days after the shocking revelation became even more difficult for Tammy and her family. The hospital room felt smaller and heavier as doctors came in and out, running tests, taking notes, and whispering about possible treatments. Tammy tried to put on a brave face, but when the door closed and she was left alone, the tears came quietly. She thought about everything she had been through: years of struggling with her weight, health scares, broken relationships, and the fear that her body might finally give up. She kept asking herself if this was the moment everything would end. If she had fought so hard only to lose the battle now. Amy sat beside her sister every day, refusing to leave. She held Tammy's hand and kept reminding her that she was not alone, that she still had a family who loved her, and fans who were rooting for her. Sometimes they laughed about silly memories from their childhood, about the days when they would sneak snacks late at night or fight over who got the bigger slice of cake. Other times they cried, because they both knew the truth. Tammy's future was hanging by a thread. Chris visited as often as he could. Though his own health wasn't perfect either, he stood tall for Tammy, but his voice would crack when he told her to keep fighting. "We ain't giving up, sis," he'd say, patting her shoulder. "You've come too far to stop now. You still got a lot of life to live, and I want you here with us." His words gave her strength. But deep down Tammy worried she might not have the power to keep pushing forward. The doctors weren't sugarcoating anything. They explained that Tammy's body was fragile, her organs under stress, and that without strict treatment and lifestyle changes, she might not survive. Every sentence felt like a dagger, but Tammy listened carefully. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just angry at the warnings, she was scared. Scared enough to consider that maybe, just maybe, she had to make the hardest changes of her life. The family rallied around her. Amy cooked healthier meals and tried to show Tammy that food didn't have to be a punishment or a poison, it could be medicine. Amanda brought her books and puzzles to distract her from stress eating. Even Misty called every night to check in, reminding her sister that she was loved and that God was watching over her. For once, Tammy didn't push them away. She accepted the support. because she finally understood how fragile everything was. Fans of the show began to flood social media with messages. Some were filled with love and encouragement, telling Tammy to keep fighting. Others were critical, saying she had wasted too many chances. Tammy saw both kinds of messages, and though the harsh ones hurt, the kind words gave her a flicker of hope. She began to imagine what it might feel like to finally overcome the weight that had been dragging her down all her life, not just physically but emotionally. At night, Tammy dreamed of walking without her wheelchair, of breathing without the oxygen tube, of living a life where she wasn't trapped by her own body. She imagined traveling, laughing freely, and proving everyone wrong. Those dreams carried her through the dark nights when fear threatened to crush her. But the road wasn't easy. There were setbacks. One night she had a breathing episode that sent alarms blaring in her hospital room. Nurses rushed in, and Amy cried as they stabilized her. The doctor later told them that her condition was still very dangerous, and that recovery would not be quick or simple. It was a reality check for everyone in the family. Still, Tammy wasn't ready to give up. She began small exercises in her hospital bed, following the therapist's instructions. She forced herself to eat the healthier meals, even when she craved her old favorites. She cried through it, but she did it. And with every small step, her family cheered her on, treating each victory as if it were a miracle. Amy recorded some of those moments for fans, not to exploit her sister's pain but to show that progress was possible, even when things seemed impossible. And when fans saw Tammy trying, they responded with even more love and support. It was as if Tammy's fight had become their fight too, a symbol that no matter how broken life seemed, there was always a chance to turn it around. The family had many late-night talks in that hospital room. They discussed their fears, their regrets, and their hopes. Tammy admitted things she had never said before, that she was terrified of dying young, that she felt guilty for putting her family through so much pain, and that she sometimes wondered if she even deserved to survive. Amy held her close and told her, "You deserve to live. Tammy, you deserve to be happy. Don't let anyone tell you different." Those words stuck with Tammy. They became a mantra she repeated to herself when the struggle felt unbearable. Slowly, she began to believe it as the weeks went on. Tammy's story became a rhythm of small victories and painful setbacks. There were mornings when she woke up determined, ready to tackle whatever exercises her therapist gave her. And there were nights when the weight of her reality pressed so heavily on her chest that she felt like giving up. The hospital lights never dimmed completely, and in the quiet hours, Tammy often stared at the ceiling, thinking about the choices that had led her here. She thought about the food binges, the stubbornness, the anger at doctors who had tried to help her. For the first time, she admitted to herself that she wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She had made decisions that brought her closer to this edge. That realization hurt, but it also gave her power. If her choices had led her here, maybe her choices could lead her out. Her family noticed the shift. Amy, who had spent years fighting her own weight battles, recognized a different fire in her sister's eyes. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't constant, but it was there. Chris teased Tammy in his usual way, calling her hard-headed and stubborn as a mule, but he also told her he was proud. Amanda, always the blunt sister, told Tammy straight to her face that she needed to keep pushing because too many people were depending on her. Tammy didn't argue. For once, she listened, because she understood their words came from love, not judgment. The doctors remained cautious. They warned that even if Tammy fought hard, her body might not fully recover. But Tammy decided not to focus on the might not. She wanted to focus on the might. That single word became her anchor. She might live longer. She might see the life she dreamed of. She might walk without assistance. For Tammy, that possibility was enough to keep trying. One particularly emotional moment came when Tammy managed to stand with the help of a walker. It wasn't for long, just a few shaky seconds, but Amy burst into tears watching her sister upright. The room filled with claps and cheers from the nurses. And Tammy herself cried, realizing how much she had taken standing for granted. It was such a small thing, something most people do every day without thinking. But for Tammy it was monumental. It was proof that she still had fight left in her. Word of her progress spread quickly among fans, and the support poured in. People from all over the world shared their own struggles with weight, health and self-doubt, telling Tammy that she was inspiring them to change too. The messages weren't just encouragement, they were confessions of pain, fear, and resilience. Tammy realized she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever felt trapped by their body, their choices, or their circumstances. That gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt before. But progress was never without pain. Some days Tammy had to face harsh truths. One doctor told her bluntly that if she didn't stick to the program even after leaving the hospital, she would almost certainly end up back in a worse condition. That terrified her. She had come too close to death to go back. Amy promised to keep her accountable, but Tammy knew the real responsibility was hers. It was a battle she had to fight every single day. The family grew closer during this time. They ate together, laughed together, and sometimes cried together. Old wounds resurfaced, but instead of tearing them apart, it seemed to heal them. Tammy apologized for the times she had lashed out, for the anger she had directed at her siblings when they only wanted to help. Amy admitted that she too had made mistakes, that sometimes her frustration with Tammy had come out in ways that weren't fair. Those raw conversations brought a new level of honesty to their relationship, one that had been missing for years. One night, Amy brought Tammy's nephew to visit. The little boy ran into the hospital room with innocent joy, shouting, "Aunt Tammy." Tammy broke down sobbing as she held him close. She realized in that moment that she didn't just want to live for herself, she wanted to live for her family. To watch her nephew grow up, to be part of his life. That visit became another turning point, a reminder of everything she stood to lose if she gave up. Still, the fear of failure haunted Tammy. She knew people doubted her, that many believed she would fall back into old habits, and truthfully, she doubted herself sometimes too. But instead of letting the fear paralyze her, she used it as fuel. Every time the cravings came, every time the exhaustion screamed at her to stop, she thought about her nephew, about Amy crying beside her bed, about Chris's words of encouragement, and about the thousands of fans who believed in her. There was also anger in Tammy's heart, anger at the years she had wasted, anger at the people who mocked her, anger at the way the world saw her as nothing more than her weight. But instead of letting that anger eat her alive, she began to transform it into determination. If people were watching, she was going to show them that she was more than the jokes, more than the headlines, more than the doubts. She was a fighter, and fighters didn't quit. As the days turned into weeks, Tammy's health slowly stabilized. She wasn't out of danger yet, but she was stronger than when she first arrived. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, telling her that while the road ahead would be long, she had already defied expectations. Tammy smiled through tears, gripping Amy's hand and whispering, "I ain't done yet." The family knew the journey wasn't over. They knew there would be setbacks, temptations, and battles still to come. But for the first time in a long time, hope filled the room instead of despair. Tammy wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting to live. As Tammy's recovery stretched into months, she began to realize just how much her life had changed. The hospital, which once felt like a prison, had become a place of rebirth. Every hallway she walked with the support of a nurse became a reminder that she was gaining strength, one shaky step at a time. Every meal she finished, according to her new dietary plan, was proof that she could relearn habits that once seemed impossible to change. The progress was not dramatic, not the kind of transformation that reality TV craves for quick episodes. But it was real. And for Tammy, real progress mattered more than flashy edits. Real progress mattered more than flashy edits. In quieter moments, Tammy reflected on her journey with a mix of pride and regret. She thought about Caleb, her late husband, and how much he had wanted them both to succeed in their health battles. His death had left a wound in her heart that still ached, but now that ache felt different. Instead of being just a source of pain, it became a motivator. She wanted to honor him by proving that his faith in her wasn't wasted. Losing him was the hardest thing she had ever endured, but she held on to the belief that carrying forward his hope for her could keep his memory alive in a meaningful way. Amy continued to be her rock, visiting as often as she could while balancing her responsibilities as a mother. Their bond, once fractured by years of fighting and misunderstandings, had never been stronger. They laughed together in the hospital room, swapping stories from their childhood, remembering the silly moments that reminded them both that they were more than just the Slaton sisters on TV. They were family, with scars and love and unspoken promises to never let each other fall again. As Tammy got stronger, discussions about her future began to surface. The doctors and therapists urged her to think about what life outside the hospital would look like. Would she be able to maintain her routines? Could she stay disciplined once she was surrounded by the temptations and stressors of the outside world? These questions haunted her, but they also gave her a sense of accountability. She didn't want to be another cautionary tale. She wanted to be the story of survival, of turning around when the world thought it was too late. Her fans, too, were part of that future. Tammy read comments online, sometimes aloud to her nurses, and she laughed at the ones that teased her in good spirit. The supportive ones, however, touched her deeply. People wrote things like, "Tammy, I'm proud of you. "You've inspired me to start my own weight loss journey," or, "Watching you fight makes me believe I can fight too." Tammy never imagined she would become a symbol for others, but now that she had, she embraced it. It gave her life a bigger purpose than she ever thought possible. There were still critics, of course. People who doubted her, mocked her appearance, or accused her of playing the victim. In the past, those voices would have sent Tammy into a spiral of anger and self-loathing, but now, she had learned to silence them with humor, resilience, and a new sense of self. "They don't know me," she would tell her family. "They only know the me they want to see, but I know the real me. And I like her better every day." When the time finally came for Tammy to be discharged, it was bittersweet. She had grown accustomed to the constant support of nurses and doctors, the safe routine that shielded her from relapse. Leaving meant facing reality but as Amy wheeled her out of the hospital doors, Tammy lifted her face to the sun and smiled. She was nervous, yes, but she was also hopeful. For the first time in years, she wasn't stepping into the unknown with fear, she was stepping into it with determination. Life outside wasn't easy. Every day presented a new challenge. Cravings tempted her. Mobility issues frustrated her. Emotional scars from years of struggle resurfaced when she least expected them. But Tammy leaned on the tools she had learned in rehab: portion control, mindful breathing, accountability check-ins with her doctors. Most importantly, she leaned on her family. Amy called her daily. Chris popped by often to crack jokes and remind her not to give up. Amanda kept her brutally honest, never sugarcoating when she saw Tammy slipping. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And progress was more than she had dared to hope for a year earlier. Fans were thrilled to see her updates online. Tammy posted videos of herself walking short distances, cooking healthier meals, or just sharing her thoughts about life. Each post became a reminder to the world that she wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't ashamed of her scars, her track tube, her bruises, or even her She was living proof that imperfection could still be inspiring. The show cameras followed her too, capturing both the raw struggles and the moments of triumph. Producers knew that Tammy's journey was more than a storyline, it was the beating heart of the entire series. Viewers didn't just tune in for drama anymore. They tuned in to witness a woman reclaim her life, piece by piece, In one particularly moving scene, Tammy attended a family barbecue. Surrounded by laughter, the smell of grilled food, and the sound of children playing, she felt overwhelmed. For years, gatherings like that had been clouded by her health issues, by the weight of sadness that seemed to hang over her. But this time, she was present, truly present. She laughed, she ate responsibly, and she even danced a little with her walker. It wasn't just about losing weight, it was about gaining moments like these. By the end of that day, Tammy sat with Amy on the porch, looking out at the fading sunset. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I didn't think I'd live to see this." Amy hugged her tightly and replied, "But you did, and you'll see so much more." That promise lingered in Tammy's heart. She knew the journey wasn't over, maybe it never would be. Healing wasn't a finish line, it was a path she would walk for the rest of her life. But now she believed she could walk it, slowly, carefully, with stumbles along the way, but always moving forward. Tammy's story became more than just reality TV fodder. It became a testament to the human spirit, the ability to face death, to face despair, and still find the courage to live. It was messy, painful, and imperfect, but it was real. And for Tammy, real was enough. As she looked toward the future, she didn't dream of perfection. She dreamed of laughter-filled family dinners, of holding her nephew's hand on his first day of school, of maybe even traveling one day without fear. She dreamed of living a life that wasn't defined by what she had lost but by what she had gained: resilience, and a second chance. And with every breath she took, every scar she carried, and every step she made, Tammy proved to herself, her family, and the world that she was no longer just surviving, she was truly living. She was truly living.